Welcome to the documentary from the BBC World Service, where we report the world, however difficult the issue, however hard to reach. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
You decided to upgrade your outdoor deck, so you ordered the essentials, a power washer, a set of patio chairs, and a shiny new grill. And you used your Bank of America customized cash rewards credit card, choosing to earn 3% cash back on online shopping and up to 5.25% as a preferred rewards member, which you put towards your most essential deck addition, a bird feeder. Apply for yours at bankofamerica.com/more rewarding. Copyright 2021 Bank of America Corporation.
Hello, I'm Nuala McGovern on the BBC World Service, and this is BBC OS Conversations, Afghanistan. The Taliban is advancing towards the capital of Kabul as foreign forces are leaving the country. We hear from journalists under the constant threat of death for doing their job, and also from two working women in Afghanistan who share their fears for their immediate future.
Every night I have personally nightmares of the Taliban coming or killing, or I cannot survive. And the next morning when you get up, you feel like you're so exhausted.
President Joe Biden set a symbolic date for full withdrawal of US troops for the 11th of September 2021. 20 years to the day the Islamist militant group Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, carried out a series of attacks in Washington and New York. Nearly 3,000 people were killed. Osama bin Laden was known to be in Afghanistan under the protection of the Taliban, and as the Taliban refused to hand him over, the US intervened militarily in 2001. Combat continued until 2014, when the Afghan army was made responsible for the country's security. And since then, the Taliban, which want to rule with a hardline form of Islamic law, have regrouped, and peace talks with the US has led to an agreed withdrawal. But as foreign troops leave, the Taliban has taken control of villages and cities across the country. Tens of thousands of Afghans are being displaced by the conflict. Simply reporting this news directly from the ground is extremely dangerous, and my colleague Carney Sharp spoke to two Afghan journalists who are trying to share what's happening in their country under life-threatening conditions. They are Ali and first Karim.
We have lost more than 100 people working as a journalist and working for the media in the past 2 decades. But the situation which we are facing in the past 3 or 4 months, that is very difficult, and it is actually a different situation which came for us and for our colleagues and our friends in the media. Actually, we are losing every week one of our friends or one of our colleagues or a person who is working for the media as a journalist or for the human rights or for the women's rights around the country, especially in Kabul, in the capital. We have targeted killing that's non-stopped. It's going on. It's continuing. But actually, I myself and my colleagues feel death every single day or every single hour. When we are working, when we are at home, we are with our friends or our family, just we are feeling dangerous death. And actually, we don't have a picture of light and hope for our tomorrow.
Ali, everything that Karim says there, does that mirror your experience?
I think it mirrors the overall experience, but I think part of the problem is that if you look at these journalist killings, it's been going on for a long time. And as Karim said, it's just gotten worse over the last few months or the last couple of years. And the problem still remains that there have been instances where the Taliban or the so-called Daesh or Islamic State forces have claimed responsibility for these killings. But a lot of times it's just passed off as unknown gunmen. And even in the past, before it became something that was making daily headlines, it was something that it would be, someone on a motorcycle would come and kill a journalist. And if there were investigations, they were never made public to us, right? We not even us as journalists knew who was killing so many of our colleagues in the media. And recently, and over the last year, The government has said, 99% of it is the Taliban, which it very well could be, but at the same time, they've never actually proven that. You don't know what you're being targeted for. You don't know who's really killing you. You don't know who's watching you at any time. That's a real fear and a real danger for journalists here. And then at the same time, we have things like the spokesman for a provincial governor being arrested because he admitted that an airstrike killed children. Or you had, I believe it was the Attorney General's office saying they wanted to put restrictions on the media where if you said things that were counter-narrative to the nation and weren't appropriate, you could, face criminal charges. So on the one hand, it's a physical violence, and on the other hand, it's these sort of efforts to try and quiet people and force them to censor themselves.
To tell you the truth, I cannot see my family once in a week. My family are living in the capital, but I cannot go to my home or my house because of threats, because I don't want to keep in danger my children and my family. So I cannot be with my friends or my family. And we see, this is important, we see the threats, we see the result of the threats which are happening every day around the country. In the past 2 or 3 months, a large number of journalists and media workers, or they left their job, especially women. For example, in Mazar-e-Sharif, in Balkh, in the north of our country, when we have a lot of reports that Taliban requested the women to stop their work, their job, and leave the media.
But despite that, that's not a deterrent. You both keep doing your job. What makes you stay in it, Ali?
What else are you going to do? This is what I know how to do, and it's a responsibility towards your people. I can go on international television and convey the message to people all over the world. I can go on a radio or a podcast, or I can write articles and take pictures. And if I can't do this much, then what else can I do? I never believe that term that someone is voiceless, but I think that what we can do is raise someone's voice so it reaches further and higher. In my opinion, that's all we can do. So we have to do it, because if we don't, then who will?
Yeah, I'm keeping my job and I'm continuing because of our people and our nation, and because of sacrifices that we paid during 2 decades. So if we stop the way, who is going to continue the job which we trained, we studied, we educated to do, is to raise our people voice and to be beside of our people in this difficult time, because of our democracy, because of our future, and because of our country and national interest.
I wonder whether you can each paint me a very personal picture here, and I'm sorry to take you and to remind you of this, but this is very striking. Tell me what it's like when one of your closest friends or colleagues is killed.
I have been shocked. And actually, when I lost my colleague during suicide attacks in Kabul, in the capital, he was reporting live coverage in Kabul. We were watching him on the TV. Suddenly, the picture was dark, and he was killed by another suicide attacks. 2 of my friend and my colleague in Kabul. I couldn't speak about in 10 minutes. I cried aloud. I was shocked. But after 10 minutes, I was on the show, live coverage, and said, yes, my friend and my colleague killed in Kabul in the second suicide attack. I had no way unless to continue to say that my colleague and my friend was killed because of what? Because of the Afghan people, because of the country, because of our democracy, and because of our freedom of speech, because of the humanity.
Our hearts go out to you because you are our colleagues doing an important job there. I wondered how your families feel about you doing this job.
Yeah, it's very difficult for our family. To tell you the truth, my mother is sick actually every day because of me. She is crying and she is requesting me every day to leave the job, to leave the country, to be safe. She is saying, I cannot actually see when you are killed. One thing I can do to her, I speak with her. I say, yes, my mother, this is the way that we have to continue. I request my brothers and my children to continue this way too. So when I'm killed, there should be another generation. There should be another chapter of this life and this kind of job here in our country, because we need it. If we want to be a part of our world, if we want to be a nation, so we have to continue. We have to pay sacrifices. My family, my children, my mother, they are tolerating much problems. But what to do? I should continue and should speak with her and kiss her hands to allow me to continue to do for my country.
Ali?
I mean, my family is far away. They're in the U.S., most of them, and I have relatives here that every time something happens, they always check and make sure that I'm okay. And as for my parents, yeah, obviously every day they're like, "Why don't you come back to the U.S.? Why don't you go somewhere else? Why don't you sort of almost like censor yourself? Like just don't say as much. Don't travel around. Like a lot of times when I travel to the provinces, they try and hide it from them, until I get back. And there are places that I've been that if they knew that, they find out later, but if they knew at the time that I was there, they would be worrying the whole entire time. But then on the other hand, they will say, like, make sure the news gets out there, make sure that people know what's going on and tell the truth.
And Ali, you do have that option of leaving because you have your family in the United States. Has that ever crossed your mind at all?
I left this country when I was little, and I didn't have a choice. I want to leave because I want to leave, but not because the enemies have made the situation so much worse. So I have to leave when 30 million other people can't.
Karim, will you ever consider leaving as your mum advises you to?
So this is the goal of our enemies, or the goal of democracy enemies, that we should leave the country, we should leave our job. They want a silent community. They don't want us. They don't want my generation. They don't want Afghanistan's 20 years, 2 decades from 2001 up to now. They want to close this chapter by leaving of us. They want to force us. They want to say to us, we kill you, leave the country. But I think, yes, the leaving is crossing in my mind every minute, maybe. I decided to stay here. I decided to work. I decided to be killed for a nation. We have a big nation. If I killed for my nation, this is proud of me.
Journalists Karim and Ali in Kabul. For women, Afghanistan can be a difficult place to live. In a report a few days ago, the Human Rights Watch organisation said the Afghan government's failure to provide accountability for violence against women and girls has undermined progress to protect women's rights. Gains by Taliban forces as the United States completes its troop withdrawal leaves the current Afghan state, and women's rights in particular, uncertain. Well, as a result of the violence, many people, along with their families, are IDPs, internally displaced people. And to get a glimpse of what life is like for women living there, my colleague James Reynolds spoke to Zara, who is part of a women's organisation, and Gisu, a civil servant and activist.
People are still going to their works, but there is a concern after Nepal target killing. There is a huge wave of concern actually going around right now in Kabul that maybe target killing will be started too. At the same time, we are having a lot of districts and provinces collapsed under the Taliban control. The narrative is not about the peace process or peace settlement anymore in the country. The narrative is about war and conflict. In the middle of that, I'm not sure. Yes, I do believe that it is very important that we have to be in the peace process. Women should be included. Although I'm working in the Civil Service Commission of Afghanistan, my portfolio is women in the civil service. I am pushing for the sustainability of 29% of women in the civil service of Afghanistan. I don't want the achievements in the past 20 years to be disregarded or at least removed or destroyed. But right now, it's totally a different scenario. Not sure. I think as a people of Afghanistan, we have to survive first. We shouldn't be killed. Right now, we are working on a campaign talking to displaced people. Most of them are, unfortunately, women and families and children. When you're hearing their stories are sad. Their stories are about, the misery that they are going through. And the story is about, a lot of families got into Kabul and the huge number of IDPs in the country, that you need to find them a refuge, you need to find them a room, you need to find them food. That is the priority. Either, it can be a government, nonprofit organizations, or even UN agencies. Everybody is calling for some support. Not sure if we can get that very soon. That is how it is in Kabul, unfortunately.
Zara, every day on the news, we report more updates on the Taliban advance. How do you deal with that in Kabul?
It's the fear of when the Taliban are going to reach Kabul, and when are we expecting Kabul to be under the control of Taliban, and when are we going to expect the country to get back to the 20 years ago, the dark era when the women were not allowed to get out of their homes, the women were not allowed to have their basic rights as a citizen of the country, as an equal citizen, to work, to have education. And I'm really concerned right now about my life, about my family's life. This feeling of fear and concern is shared by a lot of women, a lot of men around the country. My colleagues from other provinces that have been fallen under Taliban's control, we have a group, so we text every day, and they share videos, they share their concerns. In Kabul, I totally sympathize, and I not only sympathize, but I also feel that this is going to come upon Kabul sooner or later, and we have to be ready for that. Here in Kabul, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of our members, are the only thing they're thinking about are their passports, getting a visa and going somewhere, because immigration right now is, a lot of the people say it's a choice. It's not a choice anymore, because we cannot live under a regime that oppressed women with that kind of violence. There was a structural violence during the Taliban regime, and it's not possible for me as someone who has lived her life outside, having a public life, doing what I wanted to do, to live under a regime where I cannot get out of my house without a male companion or wear the burqa. This is absolutely impossible.
It used to not be like that. Right now, when you go home every night, I have personally nightmares of the Taliban coming or killing, or I cannot survive. And the next morning when you get up, you feel like you're so exhausted. First, it's because of the tensions you had at night. Second, you keep receiving a lot of notes, a lot of messages, as Zara said, from the provinces, from the people. My family are living in Ghazni province. You just feel like if you can they really survive? That fear exists. But sometimes what I do personally in my personal work, I'm saying that I shouldn't lose the energy to do my daily work. I have to balance it. Otherwise, everything is going to be so stressful that we will lose ourselves.
Giso and Zara, both concerned about the future erosion of women's rights in Afghanistan. Students are also worried about the implications of a Taliban takeover. At Kabul University last November, a gunman killed over 30 students. It was the second attack on an educational institution that week, and the government declared a day of national mourning. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for both events. To understand how students are feeling in Afghanistan, my colleague Carney Sharp spoke to two of them, Jamshid and Jamila.
When I started my school, my teachers and the people who lived in my village, they talked about the Taliban. They talked about the days when the Taliban were in power 2 decades ago, about their inhuman behavior with women, about the killings and crimes. My generation and I grew up in such an atmosphere. Yeah? As a citizen of this country, from my childhood until today, I has been hearing about the Taliban. What I saw and heard was nothing but violence, killings, ignorance, and inhuman behavior with the people. And of course, it, as you might know, it increased significantly nowadays.
And with all that you've been hearing about the past, when the Taliban had that much control, and when you're seeing what's happening now in the country, how does that make you feel?
Like thousands of other Afghans in the country, I'm also concerned about the current situation. I'm worried that I will not be able to continue my studies and achieve my dreams.
Jamila, I wanted to ask you, when you see what's happening around, what do you feel about the situation, especially as a woman?
I believe that the only way that the people of Afghanistan attain their basic rights such as freedom, education, democracy, and other rights is accessing to education. But the problem is that the process of education is long-term and it needs more and more time. But nowadays, this process is endangered.
It's really, really sad to me to say that one day I'm not able to continue my education and the Taliban get the control of across Afghanistan. And on that time, I have to leave the country because I didn't plan to stay under the Taliban in Afghanistan. Until Taliban get full control of Afghanistan, I will not leave the country because I'm completely sure that this generation, the generation to which I belong, can make this country better, to build this country instead of destroying like the Taliban.
Jamshid, it's just heartening to hear the confidence you still have in Afghanistan. I wanted to ask, Jamila, you, when you hear what Jamshid is saying about the opportunity to stay, the opportunity to make this different, your generation can change it, what are your thoughts?
This situation of Afghanistan, I think it's not sustainable. Everything changed. With this kind of situation, I don't know what should we do, especially girls, because when I passed the attack in Kabul University, I know it more better that how much Taliban, this savage group, are brutal. They don't know anything about humanity. And from the day that a new government established in Afghanistan, Taliban struggled with the people of Afghanistan. They don't know anything about Islam, but they claim that we want to establish an Islamic government. They want to stop education in Afghanistan. They don't want to let ladies to study and to complete their lessons.
Do you believe, though, that if the Taliban had to take over Kabul, that you won't be able to study, that will be denied to you as a woman?
Yes, because they are completely a savage group. They don't know anything, and they are not human.
It's so hard for the girls, women, as you know that the Taliban have closed schools and universities, and deprived girls of their most basic human rights in areas they control. Yeah, there are many reports that show schools are closed in most Taliban-controlled areas, including Afghanistan Human Rights Commission's report. Yeah. They show that girls cannot continue their education, women cannot leave home without their closest family members, which Taliban is called mahram. And beside this, they are killing civilians, destroying infrastructures which the government and people in 2 past decades were trying to build.
Let's just bring Jamila back. Just tell us, for you, as a female student yourself, what does it feel like at the moment to have the freedom to go to university, and what will it mean if the Taliban does come into Kabul and take over?
I think just not me, but all the girls of Afghanistan lose their dreams.
Students Jamila and Jamshid on their hopes and fears for the future as the Taliban continues to threaten the stability of the country and people's way of life. I'm Nuala McGovern, and this has been BBC OS Conversations, Afghanistan.
Thank you for listening. There will be more from the documentary podcast soon. The documentary is just one of our BBC World Service podcasts. There are many others to choose from.
Last year, the BBC World Service made a podcast called World Wide Web.
I just remember having my mind blown.
In the podcast, teenagers like me spent time with the people who invented the tech that has shaped our lives.
We believed someday everybody would have a cell phone.
This year, World Wide Web won a British Podcast Award.
You have conducted probably one of the greatest interviews I've ever had.
To find out why the judges liked it so much...
Wow, okay, we are in a new world.
Search for World Wide Web wherever you get your podcasts.
I have no doubt you'll do something amazing.
You're ready to get back into yoga, so you ordered the essentials, a non-slip mat, yoga blocks to keep balance, and an exercise ball. And you used your Bank of America customized cash rewards credit card, choosing to earn 3% cash back on online shopping and up to 5.25% as a preferred rewards member, which you put towards your most essential yoga gear, noise-canceling headphones. Apply for yours at bankofamerica.com/more rewarding. Copyright 2021 Bank of America Corporation.